Here's some new things that are new to the classes. So I'm going to show them to you real quick. On the Canvas page, and we're in Native 2 now, so make sure that you go into assignments from Native 2. From now on, I'm going to hopefully try to get Alex to help me get rid of Native 1 because it won't let me. So, because now it's a new quarter. So, so Native 2 is a class that we're going to be in now. So this is something that is relatively new. I do not have those books down here in the corner that I used to have for extra credit reading. I put all of my extra credit stuff into one folder, which is right here. So I'm going to show you how to access everything there and how to get to everything that you need for extra credit opportunities. So I'm going to click on here and it's going to open up a folder, a Google Drive folder. Okay, so it'll have the directions right here. So I'm going to show them to you so you know what the directions are and what I require you to do. It's loading slow today. Okay, in order to get extra credit, you have to have all of your assignments completed. I will not be giving you any extra credit points until all missing assignments are done. So you just need to find the extra credit opportunities on the Canvas homepage screen, which is where we got this from. You have folders to tell you what type of extra credit they are. So we've got one of books, one of podcasts, one of readings, one of videos. Soon I'll have another one with projects. So it just tells you what type of extra credit you can do. So you can choose what type you want to do. For videos from the history, I'm actually going to change this. For videos on the History Channel website, use the school's login. I've set up an email and login for kids to use the History Channel videos. But if it's on Netflix, YouTube, or Amazon, you just use your own personal login. So how you complete the extra credit is you need to tell me what the name is, like, so what you did. And then this tells you how long you need to say something for whatever it is that you do. And for each submission, you have to tell me what it is that you learned, like a summary of what you've learned and why it's important for people to know this. So I wanted to keep it pretty uniform. No matter what you do, you tell me the same type of things. So this is just how many points you can get for each of the different things. And to submit it and try to get the extra credit, you can either talk to me before or after class, or you can type it down, write it down, record a video, and then send it to me or turn it in. Okay, so it's pretty simple, relatively simple. So the books folder, this is a work in progress. I'm trying to get more and more of these things and more options for you guys, but there's a lot of options so far. These books right here are basically the books that I had on the homepage already before I changed it. So it has a link to where you can read it for free. You just need to sign up, but you can read it for free online. So it just has a link to that. Actually, I think this one I think is a Google Drive, like PDF, I think. I'm not sure. So there's the books. There's a link to the podcast, so you can go into this and click on any of these podcasts and listen to any episode from any of these channels. I don't have any readings quite yet, but I do have videos. So far, I only have videos from History Channel, but soon I'm going to have a list of Netflix videos, Amazon Prime videos, and YouTube videos. So all you would have to do is just click on the document and then go to it. So if you want to use the History Channel, this is the login information right here, the email and the password that you click on to log in, basically. But you click on any of these and it'll take you right to the page of the video, and then you just log in and then you watch it. So there's a lot of different ones. It's pretty cool, you know, all the different ones. This would be my ideal way of getting extra credit, is just to watch these videos and documentaries, but I know it's not for everybody. But anyway, so that is how you get to your extra credit options from the homepage. Okay. I think there's something else I wanted to show you, but there's not. Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're going to start talking about kind of like go through a timeline of all the different tragic events that have happened in Native American history. So it's not going to, this timeline is not going to include every one of them, but it's going to include the most important ones. So we're going to do a Nearpod thing for this. So to do Nearpod, to do it easily from the home screen from Canvas is, once it loads, you just click Nearpod right here on the left-hand side. And it will just open up a Nearpod window right in Canvas. You don't have to like open up a new tab. You can just do it right here. And this is where you enter the code for a session. For so Kylinda, go ahead and start that. I'm going to type in the chat the code to type in there, which you can just copy and paste in there. For anybody who is watching this later because they were absent, you guys are just going to go to the assignment in modules, which it should be visible. Nope, it's not visible. Let me make it visible. So Kylinda, you go on and get on there while I make it visible. There we go. See, just needed one click. There we go. So for anybody who is absent, I'm going to stop recording. Actually, no, I'm going to keep recording because I'm going to say some things that are not in here that are good to know. So you just click on the Tragic Events Gallery Walk, and then you just put in your name, and you just kind of do this on your own pace, but do this assignment while you're watching the Zoom class so that you can be at the same time. And I'll mention when I'm going to switch, because your video, this video that I'm recording, I don't think it shows the Nearpod thing. So you're just going to have one side of your screen will be Zoom class, another side of your screen will be this Tragic Events Gallery Walk Nearpod activity. So, because I don't think it will record this at all. Okay, all right, good. We've got Kylinda. All right, here we go. Okay, so we're gonna start in the early 1800s because, actually I wanted to show you a map and to explain it. Whoa. Apparently I can't type today. So the United States in 1819 was very small compared to, where it's at now. It's mostly just the east side of the country. So you can see in this image right here. So I guess kind of let it have like for right now, just switch over to Zoom and then you can switch back to your Nearpod. So in 1819, we basically just have this eastern side. Most of the tribes in this most eastern part, like along the coast, most of the tribes there were condensed so much due to war and disease that they were so small that they really just were in the way. There was no need to try to push Indians out of that area because there weren't really that many, so they could easily be worked around and moved around, and they're just a small little spot amidst all these white populations around them. So there really wasn't a need to remove a lot of tribes from here. So removing and wasn't a big deal until the early 1800s, which is where we're starting. So that's kind of why we're starting at the point that we're starting now. Okay, so the Civilization Act of 1819. And Kylan, you can go back to your Nearpod now. So this was just basically a law to provide U.S. government funds to subsidize or pay for Protestant missionary educators in order to convert Native Americans to Christianity, which we have already talked about a couple of times in this class about the negative things that happen because of conversion. We've got the horrible treatment in the boarding schools, as well as the praying towns. When we talked about, when we watched that video after the Mayflower, in the praying towns, even though they were told, hey, if you convert and you act white, then we'll protect you. But it didn't matter, because in the end, when the wars were going on, they're like, oh, well, you're still an Indian, so we're going to kick you out, and most of you are going to die because you have nowhere to go. So, that was two really horrible effects. But I want to make it clear that Christianity itself wasn't the problem. The problem, and it's not bad. Religion itself, when used the right way, is not bad. But Christianity was kind of used as the tool to basically say, oh, it's okay that I'm doing this because Christianity. It was used as an excuse to do the things that they wanted to do, which their main goal, like we talked about with boarding schools, was to get natives to assimilate to white culture. This was a perfect tool to get natives to assimilate to white culture. So Christianity itself wasn't bad. The way that it was used was definitely bad. So basically, the government is paying for Christians to convert natives into Christianity, again, as an effort to civilize them, Christianize them, make them more white, get them into the white culture. There we go. That's the word I'm looking for. So the next one that we've got, the Indian Removal Act of 1830. So I'm gonna give you a second. I want you to read this one to yourself, and then I'll ask you a question, Kylinda, after. So go ahead and read it to yourself first. All right, Kylan, are you done reading that through? I guess when you're done, just let me know. Okay, so the question I want to ask is, what did this basically do? What this Indian Removal Act, what did it basically do?
It basically kicked out the natives, I guess.
Yes,
Locate to a different place.
yes, it did. It did. So in this area, if you want to switch to the Zoom video for a sec, in this area is where these 5 tribes are located at, and they are going to be removed over here to which later becomes Oklahoma territory. Actually, this is more. Nope, that still mentions it as Arkansas territory. But it's basically those southern states right here. That's where those 5 tribes were at. And they were moved over to the Oklahoma territory, just right there. So that's where they were moved to. And a lot of, some of them went peacefully, and not all of them actually ended up moving. But this is where the event that we know of as the Trail of Tears happens. We have it's just some horrible effects. We've got the Cherokee people got kind of hit the worst of these 5 tribes. A fourth of their people died along the way. A fourth of them, 25% of them died. 1 out of every 4. It's a large portion of their people that died on the way. And this is all just part of this is before Manifest Destiny really takes a hold in America. And right now, before Manifest Destiny is basically trying to get the natives out, basically. So here's the thing, though. Kylinda, which president did this? What was his name?
His name was Andrew Jackson.
That's right. So Andrew Jackson, he was actually pretty popular when he before he was president. He was like I don't know, he fought in the War of 1812. He was like this country boy, kind of like this backwoods guy, down to earth. He wasn't hoity-toity like the previous presidents were. So when he became a president, people were like, oh, you're cool. Like, you're not just this high to do person. Like, you're like a normal person. And so they liked that in the president. But Andrew Jackson's experiences being a general in the army in the War of 1812 kind of just started getting him this viewpoint of, things would be a lot easier if natives were not here, if they were just move them over. So when he becomes president, he pushed this and signed it into law to remove all of the Indians in that area out to Oklahoma. And here's the thing, though. This is actually really interesting. The Supreme Court said that this was unconstitutional. This law is unconstitutional, which means that it's not okay. It goes against the Constitution. And they said that because the treaty that they signed, that the government signed with these tribes, said that is their land and they can keep it. So now this removal act goes against that treaty. So the Cherokee actually, they were probably one of the most white tribe of the time. And what I mean by that is, like, they probably, I'm not 100% sure, but probably more than any other tribe, they did everything they could to assimilate into white culture. Their the way that they did things, their education, the way that they dressed, they even made a constitution that was basically mirrored to the US Constitution. So they even went that far to make their own type of government set up just like the US government. So they're like, we're civilized, we're just like you, we're doing things like you. Basically, the only difference for some of them between them and whites were their skin color, because everything else was pretty much the same. They spoke English. So like, and this isn't all Cherokee. There were definitely a large group of Cherokee who wanted to stay more traditional and didn't want to fully assimilate, but their tribe assimilated to white culture probably more than any other tribe. So when they heard about this removal act, they're like, this isn't okay. You guys signed a treaty with us saying that we could have this land. So they took it to the Supreme Court. And through the help of some very wealthy, because if you're not wealthy, you don't have the time for this, white women, they basically, there was a lot of them who were advocates for the Native Americans, and told people and spread the word and said, hey, look, like, this isn't wrong. This is wrong. We signed a treaty with them, and look, now they're trying to remove them. So they got enough people to be on the side of the tribes and to sympathize with the tribes that the Supreme Court actually said, all right, Jackson, this act, your removal act, is unconstitutional. It's not okay. So they said, no, you cannot do this. But guess what? Andrew Jackson did it anyways. And I'm going to paraphrase, of course. I don't have I should get the exact quote, but he basically said, the Supreme Court can say it's unconstitutional, but they can't make me follow it. That's pretty much what he said. So it happened anyways, even though the Supreme Court said it was unconstitutional, it still happened and they were still removed. So here's a poll question for you. So the Cherokee leaders took the removal policies to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said that they could not be removed. So which do you think is true? Go ahead and submit your answer. So if you're listening, you'll know it. But as the results would show, the answer is actually that they declared that it was unconstitutional. So this is an example. So we're skipping to 1855 now. This is an example of what happened in California, but also happened in other states as well. They started requiring all instruction in schools to be conducted in English. So any tribe that was having school in their native tongue, nope, couldn't have it in native tongue anymore. You had to have it in English. And this is mostly for the few tribes, not a lot, but few tribes that already started having their own schools. But this wasn't just directly, directed just toward Native Americans. This was directed towards all minorities, but affected Native Americans as well. And other states soon followed with that same law. Here's something that happened that reduced land. So President Lincoln, he signs the Homestead Act. He's trying to get, this is right after Manifest Destiny becomes a thing. So he's trying to get people to move west, right? Because Manifest Destiny started in the 40s. So he's trying to get people to move out west. So let's encourage them to move out west by selling them cheap land. So basically, they said anyone who is a citizen, they could pay $1.25 for the acres of Western land if they can grow on it for 5 years. So, I mean, it's super cheap. 6 cents per count. So 6 cents per acre, basically. Like, that is super cheap, right? Of course, inflation, but it still would be incredibly cheap today to sell somebody 160 acres of land for $1.25. Might be upwards of like just a few $1,000s for 160 acres, which is unbelievably cheap. So they basically gave Indian land to railroads, speculators. They would buy all this land, especially railroads would buy all this land, and they would use it to put their railroad towns that they have throughout the railroads. And here's the thing though, they did not let non-citizens purchase the land. So, Blacks, non-European immigrants, and Native Americans, they were excluded. Native Americans weren't even allowed to purchase their own land. So go figure. So this is just a copy of an ad with millions of acres, Iowa and Nebraska. Here's just an advertisement for that. Okay, we're moving on to the next one. 1864, the Sand Creek Massacre was pretty much the first major massacre that happened in the Indian Wars. First reports say that they masked that only like just over 100 were killed, but later on historians believe that it's actually over 300 Cheyenne Indians were killed in the Sand Creek massacre. 2/3 of them were women and children. So if any of you guys did the Sand Creek as your Indian war that you reenacted, then you already know about this. But yeah, 2/3 of them were women and children. And most of the time, most of the people who were killed while trying to escape, not try to fight back. Other massacres also occurred later on. This is kind of like the first main one, including Wounded Knee and the Bear River massacres, which those three right there, everybody needs to know about because those are the three most devastating massacres that happened in the Indian Wars. Next one, 1868, we had the Treaty of Fort Laramie. Do you recognize this, Kylinda? What is that on the picture? What is it?
I don't remember what it's called, but I know that they're presidents.
That's okay. That's okay. So this is Mount Rushmore, right? Where we have the faces of 4 presidents. There's all sorts of like, there's a lot of discussion on like really what the whole purpose of this was. There's even the person who is actually the architect of this, fun fact, which is actually a horrible fact, but the guy who was the architect of this and the designer, he was a KKK supporter. So just, you know, if you ever heard of anybody say the Mount Rushmore was built by a white supremacist, by KKK, yeah, it was. That's not the purpose of the monument, but the person who designed this was definitely a white supremacist. So this Treaty of Fort Laramie basically says that whites will not enter the Black Hills. This is Lakota territory, Sioux, without Indian permission. But when gold is, well, other tribes as well, like Blackfoot. But when gold is found there, they change the terms of the treaty, and they don't tell any of the tribes about it. They don't let them agree. They just say, oh, we're gonna change this part of the treaty so that we can go get the gold. And so Mount Rushmore is from part of those mountains that are part of the treaty that they changed because they wanted gold. And that's something that we saw a few times in the Indian Wars presentations that we did last week. Was there's quite a few that are because there's a treaty, this is okay, that's your land, and it's like, oh, there's gold, okay, I want that land again. So it's kind of ridiculous. So we're gonna watch a little video clip now. Those who are watching this later, you're just gonna watch this on your own. You're just gonna play on your own. So I'm going to have you play it, Kylinda. Let me know when you're done. Okay, so $105 million, right? What do you think? So the offer to Mount Rushmore for $105 million was never accepted by the Lakota Nation. They basically said, if we accept this, and that means that we're selling it to them. It's not for sale. We never let them have it. So we can't accept it because we still don't give them permission to have this land. So today, what do you think that offer is worth? So choose on the poll which one. Well, you did pretty good. The correct answer is $3 billion. So $3 billion worth today, which is a good amount of money, but you know, they have still refused to accept it, saying we never sold it. To accept that money would mean that we're selling it to you. We never sold it to you. We will never sell it to you. Then we have something called the Naturalization Act come into play. This basically changes who is allowed to be a citizen. This allows for Blacks to be a citizen too, but nobody else, including Native Americans. So they're still not allowed to be citizens in 1870. Let's move on to the next one. 1871, the Indian Appropriations Act. Basically what this act does is before this act happened, they know like the Indian tribes are their own tribe. It's like a different nation. Okay. And you have treaties as a government, you have treaties with other countries, basically to show that, yeah, you are another nation, another country, and I'm going to do treaties with you. According to this, though, no longer do they have the status as nations, but they are considered just people living in the US territory. So this is a weird part, I think, for many, like, let's see, 50 years. Yeah, so 50 years from this point on, for the next 50 years, anybody who is Native American, they're not given a separate nation status like they used to be, but they're not US citizens either. So they're kind of like in no man's land. It's like, well, I can't be a citizen of my own nation. The US doesn't recognize us as a nation anymore. They're trying to stop doing treaties with them. Because they don't want to follow treaties anymore. They don't want to make anymore. They're still going to follow treaties, but they don't want to make any more treaties with tribes. So it's like, I'm not part of a nation according to the US because you're not going to do treaties with me, but I'm not US citizen either. So, where am I at? So this is a very confusing time, I think, because it's like, what are we, if you don't have US citizen rights and you don't have a separate nation rights, what rights do you have? Zip. This one from during the early 70s, the US government, in a way to, with Manifest Destiny as a way to get whites to move over and to natives to basically be stepping aside and moving out of the way, they permit the slaughter of buffalo. So you can see this is a very famous picture. Everybody needs to see this picture, know the truth of this picture. This is just proof of how they were just slaughtering buffalo, just left them there to rot and get picked clean by animals. We're not using them to kill for food, nothing. Just because if you get rid of the food source for these Plains Indians, then the Plains Indians will have to either move somewhere else or they'll be weakened for you to easily take control and take their land. It, on their part, it was successful. It really did weaken Native American tribes, where a decade later, no tribes are fighting against the government anymore. So it definitely helped the US to get control of the land. Definitely did. It's horrible. Look at all those skulls. That's a lot of buffalo skulls, guys. That's a lot. And then from 1879 into the 1970s, we have these boarding schools or residential schools. And we've already talked about these effects. This is just adding it to the timeline, basically. Again, the whole purpose of these schools is to convert not just to Christianity, because remember, that was the tool, right? They use Christianity as a tool to get them to assimilate to white culture. Because the best way to make a people assimilate to you is assimilate the children, because adults are not going to, they're going to resist. They're not going to push back or fight back against, they are going to fight back. They are going to resist, but the kids won't. So we already know the effects. We talked about this last week. So moving on to the next one, 1887, the Dawes Act. This, first we have reservations, right? Actually, let's talk about what this is first. So Princess was a student I asked last hour about this question. That's why I said Princess. Catalinda, go ahead and read this and tell me, what do you think this Dawes Act did? Okay, so what do you think that this basically did?
Basically, it took over the native land.
Right. So
By
again,
selling it to
getting
different
rid of some of that land, right?
Yeah.
So first we have putting tribes on reservations, right? Limiting their land that way. Then we have the Homestead Act in the 60s, where they're allowing people to purchase lots of land and reducing reservations even more. Basically, it starts chipping away at the edges of reservations. And then comes the Dawes Act, where basically inside of a reservation, they can start purchasing little spots within the reservation, hence the checkerboard effect, right? Have you ever heard of that before?
Mm-mm.
So the checkerboard effect happened here on this reservation as well. And I'm going to show you, this is a drawing activity that you're going to do this next slide. So you can see on the small picture, you can see how it has the red borderline of where the reservation used to be. And then that dark area, like that's, I mean, that is the reservation, right? The red line is the reservation, but tribal land that they own and wasn't allotted through the Dawes Act to white families is that darkened area. So this is how Roosevelt and Ballard came to be, you know, and Duchesne came to be here, owned by whites, even though it's on the reservation, because the reservation is the red border. So you're gonna do a quick drawing to here. There, I have the background of the reservation. You're gonna kind of draw basically where the tribal lands are, basically kind of like copying that other image there. So go ahead and draw that. Just do it super quick because we got like a minute and a half left. So just do it super quick because we got like a couple more things. All right, so then we have, starting in the 1890s and going all the way to 1970s, we have the suppression of Native religion. So just like in Wounded Knee, the ghost dance, where they were terrified that they thought that they were going to come and have a rebellion and have, you know, this resistance and fight a war because of the ghost dance. They didn't know what it was. So like, oh, they must be gearing up to fight us. Another big part of trying to get natives to assimilate to white culture is to get rid of their religion. So it wasn't until the 70s. So started pretty much in the 1890s, really before then. And it went to the 1970s where finally natives were, it wasn't a crime to practice their rituals. As I said at the bottom, spiritual leaders ran the risk of jail sentences of up to 30 years for simply practicing their rituals. So it wasn't until the 70s that was over. And then from the 40s to the 60s, we have this termination policy where they are terminating or ending the status of tribes as like protected statuses, because they're like, you know what, it's gonna be better if you guys assimilate to white. So let's get rid of tribal identities and you guys all assimilate to white culture, US culture. It was a good sentiment, but a very bad execution because they did not ask anybody if that's what they wanted. They just completely terminated all the permissions and all the rights that they had. For example, one tribe had a 75% dropout rate because they didn't have any more federal money for tribes to help keep education going. So that's a huge dropout rate. And then IHS was providing care, but once a tribe was terminated, they lost their eligibility and they couldn't use that anymore. So they had a bunch of lawsuits against it, and it went from the 60s to the 80s where they finally said, all right. Yeah, we'll give you protective status again. We'll be good. So that kind of was restored. And it restored self-determination, basically a tribe saying, I want to be able to do what we want to do on our land. Don't tell us what to do. One last thing. Go ahead and answer this on here real quick and then submit it, and then you can go on to your next class. So most devastating event from the 1800s that you learned about today in class, and why do you think it was the most devastating event? So go ahead and type that up, post it, submit it, and then we'll see you tomorrow. Okay.